9FA has two sections, demolition and types of explosion. In the demolition section, they just talk about using explosives to knock down buildings, and the buildings are demolished by implosion. And in your book, implosion is defined as an object being destroyed by collapsing in on itself. There are a few things you have to be aware of here. Firstly, that you have to do the demolition safely, that you have to make sure you don't end up with any undetonated explosives, and that the building mustn't fall down and knock into something else nearby. And you also need to know that when explosives are detonated, a large amount of energy is transferred to the surroundings. Gases are produced, and these expand very quickly and create very high pressure. And it's this high pressure that can make a shockwave and create the really loud sound that we'll hear. That's it really for demolition. Types of explosion next. So with explosions, you need to remember that there is a huge and sudden increase in volume and a huge transfer of energy to the surroundings. And if no new substances are made, this is just a physical change and not a chemical change. And we can find these physical changes in volcanoes and geysers. And in your book, they have an example of a trash-cano. Here it is. This is a physical change happening through an explosion. In this case, they had liquid nitrogen, which was boiling quickly, and then it turned into a gas very quickly, contributing to this increase in volume. So it was the release of this nitrogen gas. And then we talked about the huge transfer of energy to the surroundings. Well, in this case, this expansion of energy caused the water that they'd put on top of the liquid nitrogen into the air. We can have explosions caused by a chemical reaction too. So we have physical reaction explosions and chemical reaction explosions. One example of a chemical reaction explosion is this fuel explosion in your book. A petrol tank was overfilled, some petrol escaped, and there were petrol vapours in the air, and then a spark caused this petrol to explode violently because petrol is flammable. Keyword flammable. This is classed as a chemical reaction because new substances were formed, like large amounts of carbon dioxide gas and water vapour. And just a reminder, if we're thinking about a chemical reaction on an atomic level, we're thinking about the fact that the atoms in the reactants are rearranging when they become the products. And we're also encouraged to remind ourselves about how pressure works and think about particle theory when we think about pressure. So just remember there are three main ways that we might increase pressure. One way is to have more gas particles altogether, increase the number of gas particles in the area. So there are more particles jumping around and hitting on things and bouncing off things. Decrease the size of the space that these gas particles are in, so they'll be hitting against things more often. And the third way to increase pressure is to increase the temperature. If we increase the temperature, particles will vibrate more and move faster and hit things more often. So just have a little bit more of a think for yourself about how pressure and chemical reactions relate to explosions, how those three topics all tie in together. And that's explosions.